Today at Christchurch, we're continuing to think about the fruits of the Spirit, and today we're thinking about the fruit of joy. And I wanted to start this thought really by asking you a question. When have you felt most joyful in your life? When have you felt most joyful in your life? And if I had to answer this question, I would probably say that the day our son was born was one of the most joyful days of my life most recently. Or going back a little bit further, our wedding day. Or maybe even a bit further again, the day that I was confirmed as a teenager. All of these days were days of great celebration and excitement. But as I was thinking about this question, I was also reminded of a time when I was at university, and during the summer holidays I spent some time with other students working with a Christian charity in Zambia. Our first day in Zambia was probably one of the most joyful days of my life too, but it didn't actually start out this way. Actually, it was a very challenging day. I remember really clearly on this particular morning in Zambia being taken in a minibus to visit a feeding project where children who'd been tested and found to be HIV positive and didn't have enough food to eat would be invited to come 3 days a week to have a proper meal. And if I'm honest, when I first arrived at the feeding project, I was overwhelmed by the poverty that I saw. I thought that we were going to see something that was going to be really slick and impressive. I imagined a really impressive kitchen and dining room. But actually when we arrived, all we saw was a group of determined ladies who cooked food on giant fires in between the shacks where they lived. This was the kitchen, and then the dining room was just a giant piece of tarpaulin that was tied over some poles to provide some shade to the children as they ate their food. Some of these children were orphans, some had walked miles and miles for this food. And as I sat there and joined with these children, I couldn't believe the poverty that existed in their world. I felt sad and I felt angry, and I felt frustrated that people were living in these conditions, that people didn't have enough food to eat, and people had to walk miles and miles to eat a basic meal like this. But as the day went on, something really unexpected happened to me as I spent some time at this feeding project. I found myself having fun and actually experiencing deep joy, a kind of joy that I never thought would really be possible in a situation like this. I remember trying to help the ladies who were cooking, and I remember trying to help them stir the giant pots of enzima, which is a bit like mashed potato. And I wasn't very good at this, and they were laughing at me about how much stronger they were than me. I remember sitting and eating lunch with the children and being overwhelmed by how keen they were for us to chat and to sit with them and then to play games with them afterwards. I remember having lots of fun and enjoying myself. And most of all, I remember after lunch teaching the children songs and dancing around in a giant circle with them in the mud in the midday heat. And as we were singing and we were dancing and we were remembering how much God loved us, in that moment I experienced deep joy, which came from a sense that God really was with us. He knew us inside out. He loved us more than we could ever imagine. And there was nothing more than he desired for us in that moment than to come before him and to sing and to dance before him, knowing that he was with us. And to be honest, I've never really forgotten that moment. I felt like God was saying to me in that moment, learn from these children. Even in these difficult circumstances that they are facing, they've chosen to put me first. They've chosen to worship me, and they found that they're able to rejoice in me. And those children, they always remind me of the Apostle Paul when he writes in chapter 4 of Philippians, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say it, rejoice. And then he goes on to say, the Lord is near. Those children remind me of Paul's words. They chose to rejoice in the Lord, even though they were facing very difficult circumstances and it feels like the rest of the world had forgotten them. They chose to rejoice. And as they rejoiced, they found God's love. They found that he was near. So today, however you're feeling, whether you feel like you're on top of the world, or maybe you feel like the world is on top of you, I want to encourage you to remember that God is near to you. And when we choose to invite him to be with us in our days, even if they seem to be long and hard and challenging, he promises that he will help us and he will meet with us. God will help us to find joy and he will help us to know his presence with us. So I want to encourage you today, don't write off today too quickly. Even if today seems challenging, even if there seems to be too much to do today, even if you're struggling with the changes in life that you've been facing recently, don't write this day off. Actually reach out to God. Ask him to be with you. Ask him to help you rejoice in him. And who knows, today could be a beautiful day where you know and you experience God's love and joy at work in your life. Why don't you try it now for just a few seconds? Ask the Lord to be with you and choose to rejoice in him today. Amen.